I gave them 30 years. 30 years of loyalty, sweat, and silence. And all it took was one cold sentence to wipe it away. My name is Marcus Blake. I'm 63 years old, and for the last 29 years, I worked at a company called Redridge Systems. I was their facilities manager, the kind of person you don't notice until something stops working. Lights, heat, ventilation, server rooms. I made sure it all stayed up and running. First one in, last one out. I trained almost every facilities employee who passed through those doors. I never asked for much, just to do the work right and go home. I had 4 days left before I reached my 30-year mark. 4 more work days and I would have qualified for full retirement benefits. That had been the plan for a long time. Steady work, no complaints, finish strong. Instead, I got called into a meeting. The new CEO, Logan Carr, didn't even look at me at first. He kept his eyes on his laptop and said, "We're restructuring. Hope there are no hard feelings." Then he handed me a folder with my termination papers. He called it a business decision. "Nothing personal," he said. I didn't say much. I knew how these things usually went. Older employees who raised their voice were shown the door by security. I wasn't going to make a scene. I signed the paperwork, handed in my badge and master keys. Keys I'd used for nearly 3 decades, and walked out. Past the cubicles, the break room, the front desk. Nobody said anything. They just looked away. I got in my truck and sat for a moment. Something didn't feel right. I knew my dates. I knew I was 4 days away from hitting that 30-year milestone. But the paperwork said I had 29 years and 10 months of service. That didn't line up. When I got home, I pulled out my old documents, pay stubs, handbooks, memos. I had kept records. My late wife, Sharon, always told me to save everything. Just in case, she'd say. I found the policy document from back when they updated the retirement plan. It was simple. 30 years of service or age 65. Whichever comes first, qualifies for full retirement benefits. I was 63, but I had 29 years and 11 months logged. Not 10. Then I remembered a memo the company sent a few weeks earlier. It was a general update about benefit policies and service calculations. I printed it out when it came. There, in plain text, it said employees should verify their service records as they approached retirement. It made me pause. I went through every single one of my pay stubs all the way back to when the system changed. And everything confirmed my timeline. They were off by a month. Either by mistake or on purpose. I thought about calling Logan, but I knew how that would go. He'd explain it away or tell me to speak to someone in HR. Instead, I searched my old contacts and found the number for Janice Holloway, the former HR director at Redridge. She retired last year, but she was always known for being fair and meticulous. I hadn't spoken to her in a long time. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, trying to decide if it was worth it. Calling her would mean not letting this go. It would mean pushing back instead of moving on. After a while, I picked up the phone and dialed. She answered on the second ring. "Marcus Blake," she said before I even introduced myself. "I heard what happened." Janice Holloway didn't sound surprised. She'd worked in HR for 12 years before she retired, and she had seen how companies changed, especially after new leadership took over. I walked her through what happened. The meeting, the paperwork, the service dates not lining up. I explained how my records showed 29 years and 11 months. Just 4 days away from 30. She listened without interrupting, just occasionally asking for dates or confirming names. When I finished, she paused. "You kept all your pay stubs?" she asked. "Every single one," I said. "Plus the old handbooks, memos, even the email updates." "Smart," she replied. "Most people don't. And that memo about verifying your years of service? That's especially helpful." She told me something I hadn't expected. What happened to me could be illegal. Under federal law, companies aren't allowed to terminate employees to stop them from collecting earned benefits. But to prove that, you need more than just timing, you need evidence of intent. Then she said something that made everything real. "If you're serious about this, bring me everything, your documents, memos, emails, anything that supports your case. But if we go forward, this becomes a legal matter. No talking to anyone at the company. No posting online. Keep it quiet until we have everything in order. I agreed. Monday morning, I loaded 3 boxes into the truck. Neatly labeled folders with dates, documents, performance reviews, memos, and all 29 years worth of history. Janice took her time, going through everything one sheet at a time. She took notes as she read. When she got to Logan's memo, the one about updating benefit calculations, she read it twice. This is solid, she said. He clarified service calculations. Then 4 weeks later, they let you go using the wrong numbers. That's not just a clerical error. That's a problem. She explained the process. We would file a complaint with the Department of Labor. If they decided to investigate, they'd request internal documents, interview witnesses, and review employment histories. If they found a pattern or signs the company acted deliberately to avoid paying benefits, there would be serious consequences. Not just fines, but possible criminal charges for those involved. How long does that take? I asked. Hard to say, she said. Could be weeks, could be months. But once we file, there's no going back. Redridge will know you didn't walk away quietly. I understood what that meant. The next day, Janice filed the complaint. And by Wednesday evening, she called me with unexpected news. They're moving fast on this, she said. Turns out you're not the only one. The Department of Labor had been looking into Redridge already. According to the investigator assigned to the case, 3 other employees had been terminated in the past 2 years, each of them just months away from full pension eligibility. All were in their 60s. All had service records that, on paper, looked slightly off. They're calling it a pattern, Janice said. They suspect it's part of a bigger strategy. Then she told me something that made it all click. The investigator requested personnel files for all 4 of you, and in those files they found emails between Logan and the new HR director, talking about ways to cut long-term costs. Your name came up 6 times in the last 3 months. That stopped me cold. What did they say? I asked. They called you a legacy cost. Said your pension and benefits were too expensive. That your position could be absorbed by others. From the looks of it, they were planning this for months. While I was showing the new guys how to read blueprints and fix backup generators, they were figuring out how to replace me, just before they had to pay me what I'd earned. Then came the final piece. The Department of Labor wants to meet with you, Janice said. Tomorrow morning. Someone from their criminal division will be there too. I didn't say anything right away. Marcus, she continued, benefit fraud isn't just a bad business decision. If they used email or company systems to coordinate this, it's wire fraud. And people go to prison for that. The next morning, I sat in a quiet office at the Department of Labor downtown. Across from me were 2 investigators, young, professional, polite. They recorded the conversation and walked me through every year of my employment at Redridge Systems. They weren't just asking general questions. They had copies of emails I'd never seen, internal company messages, meeting notes, memos. Then they showed me one email chain between Logan Carr, the CEO, and Patricia Mendez, the current HR director. It included a spreadsheet. The title was simple, Q4 Optimization Targets. My name was on it alongside 3 others. All of us were marked with notations like high benefit exposure and recommend termination pre-vesting. That was their plan. It wasn't a paperwork error. It wasn't a misunderstanding. They had listed us, calculated how much our pensions would cost, and decided to cut us loose before the benefits vested. Clean, quiet, profitable. They called it proactive workforce management. The investigator turned to me. Mr. Blake, he said, we believe Redridge Systems intentionally miscalculated employee service dates to avoid paying earned retirement benefits. That's not just a civil issue. That's fraud. They were preparing to take the case to federal court, and they needed me to testify. I thought about it for a moment. About the early mornings, the weekends I'd worked, the late nights during emergencies when no one else answered their phone. I thought about the people I'd trained, the systems I kept running. I said yes. They thanked me and told me they'd be in touch. 2 days later, Logan Carr called. I let it ring twice before answering. Marcus, he said, trying to keep his tone light. I heard you've been talking to people about your termination. I really hope you're not planning anything irrational. I didn't respond. He kept going. Look, I know you're upset, but everything was done by the book. Your file says 29 years and 10 months. It's unfortunate timing, that's all. Then he gave me a date. January 15th, 1995. He claimed that was my official start date. It wasn't. I started on December 15th, 1994, and I had the offer letter and first pay stub to prove it. But I could tell what he was doing, trying to make it seem like a reasonable dispute, trying to make me question my own records. Then came the threat. Of course, he added, if someone were to file a complaint against the company, we'd have to take a close look at their entire history, make sure there weren't any issues. You understand. I understood exactly. He was letting me know that if I pushed this, they'd dig into everything they could and try to find something, anything, to discredit me. I hung up. What he didn't know was that the complaint had already been filed. The investigation was underway. The evidence was piling up. Later that week, Janice called again. They found more, she said. Emails going back 3 years. Meeting minutes. Presentations to the board. The entire strategy was laid out. Identify older employees close to pension eligibility. Flag them. Document any minor performance concerns. Eliminate the position just before the benefits locked in. It wasn't sloppy. It was systematic. She also told me that the company had used internal messaging platforms to discuss some of it. That made it a wire fraud case. The investigators had enough to move forward. Marcus, Janice said, they didn't expect you to keep everything, and they definitely didn't expect you to fight back. The week after the interviews, things moved quickly. On Monday, Janice called with an update. The Department of Labor has escalated the case, she said. They've seized Redridge's internal email servers. They're interviewing current staff. This isn't just an internal matter anymore. It's turning into a full federal investigation. By Wednesday, investigators served a search warrant on the HR department and Logan's office. The story hadn't broken publicly yet, but inside Redridge, people had started asking questions. Janice kept me updated. She said the documents they found confirmed everything. Spreadsheets that tracked which employees were approaching retirement, internal memos about reducing legacy overhead, and even slide decks presented to the board discussing how to restructure aging departments. There was a phrase used in one of those slides that stuck with me. Benefit exposure risk mitigation required. I was one of the names under that heading. They'd planned this, and now they were being forced to answer for it. On Friday, Logan called again. His voice had changed. It was no longer confident. Marcus, he said, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. We should sit down, review everything, talk through it like professionals. I didn't respond. He kept going. Look, maybe there was an error in your service calculation. If you're willing to come in Monday, we can fix it. You'll get what you deserve. I knew why he was calling. The investigation had leaked. Redridge's legal team was probably scrambling. I'd already heard from Janice that a few investors were asking questions. The board had held an emergency meeting. The story was getting out. I calmly said, there's nothing to fix on my end, and hung up. The next call didn't come from Logan. It came from the company's lawyer. Mr. Blake, the voice said, my client would like to offer a formal settlement, full reinstatement of your pension, health coverage, and a payment of $50,000, provided you agree not to pursue further action. I let that sit in the air for a moment. Let me think about it, I said. Then I called Janice. Don't take it, she said immediately. That's panic money. The criminal charges haven't even been filed yet. Once they are, Redridge will be facing more than just fines. And they know it. She was right. A few days later, more employees, past and present, reached out to the Department of Labor. At first, it was just a few. By the end of the week, it was more than a dozen. All of them had the same story. Let go shortly before hitting their retirement milestones. All of them told they were being restructured. All with questionable service date calculations. It had become clear. This wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern. The story finally hit the local news. Federal investigation targets Redridge Systems. Logan's photo was on the front page of the business section. Not smiling, not confident, just a man who looked like he knew what was coming. And I didn't have to do anything but wait. The documents spoke for themselves. The emails, the spreadsheets, the planning. They tried to play it like a business strategy. But it wasn't. It was people being pushed out just before they were owed what they had worked for. They didn't count on someone keeping records. And they definitely didn't count on someone calling it what it was. By Tuesday morning, it wasn't just a local story anymore. The Department of Labor filed formal charges. Logan Carr and Patricia Mendez, Redridge's head of HR, were named in the federal complaint. The news mentioned terms like wire fraud, conspiracy, and systematic benefit denial. Then, just after 8 a.m., I got a call from Janice. "Turn on the news," she said. Channel 7. I switched on the TV. There they were, Logan and Patricia, being led out of the Redridge office building in handcuffs. Behind them, federal agents carrying boxes of documents. The news anchor explained it simply. Redridge Systems is under federal investigation after allegedly terminating longtime employees to avoid paying earned retirement benefits. Sources indicate at least 18 employees were affected. Charges include multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. They even showed part of the internal spreadsheet. My name was blurred out, but I recognized the format. I sat there quietly, watching. I wasn't celebrating. I wasn't angry, just still. It had taken years to build that career. They tried to erase it in one meeting. But now the truth was on the table. By the end of the week, Redridge's board voted to remove Logan Carr and Patricia Mendez. Both were placed on unpaid leave pending trial. I got another call, this time from a different company lawyer. "Mr. Blake, Redridge is prepared to offer a full settlement. Reinstatement of your pension, full healthcare benefits, and additional compensation for what you've experienced. The amount we're prepared to offer is $200,000, plus all legal fees covered." I didn't give an answer right away. Instead, I asked for everything in writing. I reviewed every detail with Janice. It was real. This time, there were no hidden terms. No tricks. They weren't doing it out of goodwill. They were doing it because they had to. And I accepted not because of the money, but because it meant they finally admitted what they did. 3 months later, I was back in my small workshop, building a bookshelf for my daughter. The smell of sawdust in the air. Simple work. Honest work. My pension payments had started. On time every month. The additional compensation sat in my savings account, untouched. I didn't need it immediately, and I wasn't in a rush to spend it. Logan Carr pled guilty. He was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Patricia Mendez got 6 months and 2 years of probation. Redridge Systems was eventually acquired by a larger firm. The entire executive leadership was replaced. The story ran one last time in the paper. Retired workers' complaint leads to federal investigation. Redridge cleans house. They wanted to interview me. I declined. My daughter called while I was sanding the last shelf. "I saw the article," she said. "I'm proud of you." "I didn't do anything special," I replied. "I just made a phone call." She paused for a second, then said, "Sometimes that's all it takes." And she was right. If the story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Know someone who's been through something similar? Tag them or drop a comment below. Let's talk about how loyalty, fairness, and quiet courage still matter. Hit the bell icon to catch more real stories that deserve to be heard.